Jack-o'-lanterns of despair, a Halloween mystery. The crisp October air wrapped around our small farmhouse like a shroud, carrying with it the familiar scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. It was the eve of Halloween, and my sister Lily and I had gathered in the cozy kitchen with our mother, Emily, to partake in our annual tradition, pumpkin carving. Our small town, nestled in the heart of the woods, had few Halloween festivities, but we had always found our own joy in carving the perfect jack-o'-lanterns. The old farmhouse had been in our family for generations, passed down through the years. It was a place rich in history, creaking with the stories of long-gone relatives and echoing with secrets whispered by the ancient oak trees that surrounded it. The barn behind the house stood tall and imposing, its red paint peeling and time-worn. "Are you girls ready for another year of pumpkin carving?" Mom asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she laid out the pumpkins we had picked from the patch earlier that day. They were plump and orange, their flesh begging to be transformed into grinning faces. Lily and I nodded eagerly, our faces painted with the warm glow of the kitchen's overhead light. The table was covered in newspapers, and sharp knives glinted menacingly next to each pumpkin. The ritual was about to begin. Mom always started by telling us a spooky story. It was a tradition as old as the pumpkin carving itself. She believed it set the mood for Halloween and reminded us of the rich history that surrounded our family. This year, her tale sent a chill down our spines. "Once in the heart of these woods there lived a wicked witch," Mom began, her voice hushed and filled with foreboding. She was said to have the power to steal the souls of those who crossed her path. On Halloween night, she would roam the forest, searching for victims to add to her cursed collection. Lily and I exchanged nervous glances. Mom always had a knack for spinning the most unsettling stories. "The legend says that she had a hidden lair, deep within the woods, where she kept her enchanted pumpkins," Mom continued, her words drawing us in. "These pumpkins were said to have the power to grant any wish, but at a terrible price: the soul of the person who made the wish." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Mom's stories had never been this dark before, but the flickering candlelight in the room cast eerie shadows on her face, enhancing the ominous atmosphere. "Legend has it that the witch was defeated many years ago, but some say her spirit still lingers in the woods," Mom whispered, her eyes locked onto mine. "So be careful what you wish for tonight, my darlings." With that unsettling tale echoing in our minds, we turned our attention to the pumpkins. We each selected our own, feeling the cool, bumpy texture of their skins beneath our fingers. Mom had provided us with templates for carving, but we were free to let our creativity flow. Lily chose a mischievous grin, while I opted for a more classic, toothy smile. As we started to cut into our pumpkins, the room filled with the familiar, earthy scent. The sound of knives slicing through pumpkin flesh was soothing, a reminder of the years we had spent honing our skills. But this time, something felt different. I couldn't shake Mom's story from my mind. The witch and her enchanted pumpkins seemed to hang in the air like an ominous cloud. I glanced at Lily, who was deep in concentration, carving her pumpkin with precision. She didn't seem as affected as I was. As I continued to carve, my thoughts began to drift. What if the witch's story was more than just a legend? What if her lair was hidden deep within these woods, waiting to be discovered? I shook my head, trying to dispel the absurd notion. It was just a story, after all. But as I made the final cut to complete my jack-o'-lantern's grin, something strange happened. The pumpkin's flesh seemed to ripple as if it were alive. I pulled my hands back in shock, dropping the knife onto the table. "Lily, did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Lily looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "See what?" I stared at the pumpkin, half expecting it to come to life, but it remained still, its grin now frozen in place. "I must have imagined it," I told myself, shaking off the strange sensation. We finished carving our pumpkins, and Mom lit candles to place inside them, casting an eerie glow across the kitchen. The witch's story had unsettled me, but I tried to push it to the back of my mind as we admired our handiwork. Our jack-o'-lanterns grinned back at us, their faces flickering in the candlelight. As the night wore on, we gathered around the kitchen table for a late dinner. The warmth of the meal and the cheerful chatter helped to dispel the lingering unease from Mom's story. But just as I began to relax, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the barn. We all jumped in our seats, our eyes wide with fear. The barn had always been a mysterious and slightly eerie place, its secrets known only to our ancestors. Mom had forbidden us from entering it, saying it was too dangerous. But now, the sound had come from within its dark confines. "I'll go check it out," Mom said, her voice trembling slightly as she stood up. "No, Mom, it could be dangerous," I protested, my heart pounding. "I can't just ignore it," she replied, her maternal instincts taking over. "Stay here with Lily. Lock the doors and don't let anyone in until I come back." With that, Mom grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the barn, her footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. Lily and I huddled together at the kitchen table, our eyes fixed on the door, waiting anxiously for our mother's return. Minutes turned into hours, and still, there was no sign of Mom. The unease that had settled over us earlier now grew into full-blown fear. What could have caused that crash in the barn, and where was Mom? As the hours dragged on, my mind began to wander back to the witch's story. "We have to go find Mom," she said, her voice trembling. I nodded, and together we mustered the courage to leave the safety of the kitchen. We crept through the darkened house, our footsteps barely making a sound. The only light came from the flickering candles inside our jack-o'-lanterns, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As we approached the barn, the night seemed to grow colder, and the woods surrounding us grew darker. The barn loomed before us, its old wooden doors slightly ajar. We pushed them open slowly, revealing the darkness within. The flashlight Mom had taken lay on the ground, its beam pointing toward the center of the barn. We picked it up, our hands trembling, and directed its light toward the source of the crash. What we saw sent shivers down our spines. In the center of the barn was a large, gnarled oak tree, its roots reaching down into the earth below. Hanging from the branches of the tree were dozens of pumpkins, their faces carved into sinister grins. "Those are the enchanted pumpkins," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. It was as if Mom's story had come to life before our eyes. But where was Mom? We cautiously approached the tree, our eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of her. And then we saw it, a small wooden door set into the base of the tree. It was partially ajar, revealing a dimly lit chamber beyond. With trembling hands, we pushed the door open and stepped inside. The chamber was filled with the scent of earth and pumpkins. At the center of the room, Mom and another shadowy figure. "What are you doing here?" said Mom, sobbing. "We had no choice. We had to find you, Mom," I said, my voice choked with emotion. The shadowy figure revealed herself to be the witch. She was real, but not anything as I imagined, more human-like. As I looked into Mom's eyes, I saw something was terribly wrong. "It's time to go," said Mom. Her eyes seemed so empty, as if something had been taken from her. Mom explained that Lily and I both died in a tragic accident on the eve of Halloween 5 years ago. Mom made a deal with the witch to bring us back, but only for one day. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. We were the lost souls. The enchanted pumpkins held the souls of all the children whose parents were not ready to let go. Mom's hollow gaze filled me with dread. Our annual tradition of pumpkin carving had turned into a nightmare as we were set to relive this night over and over with the same tragic end, until Mom was ready to let us go.